Hello. Let me start off by saying that I hope this is an appropriate way to turn this assignment in. I tried to use Flipgrid, but it only gave me a minute and 30 seconds to record in, and I knew I would need way more than that to finish this project, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to change that time limit. So for this lesson plan, I chose decision making, and I would love to actually teach this to someone and video myself doing that. However, my audience will be my husband and 1-year-old little girl who is learning to walk, and she's all over the place, so it would really be more of a distraction than anything. I chose decision making because I feel like this is something that my students are going to be faced with throughout their lives, and it's really important for them to know. So my objective would be for my students to learn the process of decision making and to recognize that there are many factors that are involved when making decisions. I chose the objectives because, like I mentioned, students will have to make decisions for the rest of their lives, and I want them to understand how to make good decisions, how to be able to recognize the different factors in our lives that will influence their decision making, especially when the factors might not be a positive influence, such as negative peer pressure or something like that. I will plan to group my students in whole group first for instruction for this lesson because I want to be able to talk to them a whole while we discuss decision making and the different factors that influence how we make choices. Because we all have different backgrounds, beliefs, and morals, my students will all have differing opinions on how to make decisions and on the factors that will influence them during their decision making process. I think whole group instruction will allow collaboration and give me the opportunity to help direct the discussion and take part as needed. The instructional strategies I'll use during this lesson are explicit instruction and collaboration. And I've chosen explicit instruction because, again, I want to ensure that my students understand just how important it is for them to develop their decision making skills because they're going to make hundreds of daily decisions for the rest of their lives. Some of them are going to be very easy decisions that don't require much thought, like which shirt should I wear today, while others are going to be very big decisions that will impact the rest of their lives. I've chosen collaboration as my second instructional strategy, so my students can work together to identify factors that influence our decisions and brainstorm other factors that might not have been mentioned during our activity. This lesson plan I made is for a 5th grade classroom. The beginning of the class, I just intend to have them all sit together with me on the rug in a circle. I'm going to tell them that we're going to talk about making decisions and ask them how many decisions they think that they made even before they made it to school that morning. After a few seconds, I plan to call on students for responses. And then we're going to talk about the activity and begin our game. So I want them to play a game sort of like hot potato where they must have a ball that they toss to a classmate and ask their classmate a question. Questions, of course, must be appropriate for the classroom, and you can either give the student 2 options to choose from, for example, dog or cat or why, or must ask the student why they made a certain choice for that day. An example of that might be, why did you wear those shoes? I'll give them examples of questions and responses such as the ones I've included here to help them gain a better understanding of the process of this game. So, for example, student 1 has the ball would say dog or cat, why, and toss the ball to a peer. And student number 2 would answer, and their answer may be something such as dog because I think they're friendlier than cats. Student 2 will then say, oh, I didn't realize I put 3 in there. Student 2 should say, why did you choose to wear the shoes you're wearing today? And then on to student 3, who would say, because I have PE today and athletic shoes are more appropriate for participation than, say, strappy sandals might be. I did find this activity from the Snap Decisions activity on a lesson plan on this website. I did modify it a little bit to include some different types of questions. So before we start the game, I would have my students take a couple minutes and just think of a few questions that they might ask a peer. That way we can try and reduce the same questions being asked multiple times. Then I want to ensure that my students know they should pay attention to their classmates when they're speaking to show them respect and just to ensure that everyone that is playing can hear the questions and responses. After each student has had a turn, I want them to scoot out of the circle and have the circle enclose again to ensure that everyone has a turn to ask and answer a question. The last student in the circle will toss the ball back to me and ask a final question that I will answer. I will start the game by tossing the ball to a student asking a question. And again, this game is going to continue until everyone has had a turn and I have the ball in my hands again. After our game has ended, I want my students to form small groups and just brainstorm about the different factors that influence their peers' decisions during the game, and then list any other factors they can think of that might influence our decision-making process. After a few minutes of small group work, I plan to call in different groups and have them share out some of the factors that they listed. We can then briefly discuss the differing factors and how we all make decisions differently based on our own ideas, thoughts, opinions, backgrounds, and outside influences. And then I think it's important for me to mention factors that my students might not have felt comfortable addressing, such as monetary availability, lack of monetary availability, and even religious beliefs that they might not feel comfortable bringing up with their friends. After that, for my independent work, just to give them more practice, I want my students to think about a difficult decision that they have had to make in their life and use their journals to write about it. I want them to include the situation, the problem they are faced with, the choices that they made, and the factors that influence their final decisions. And then at the end of class, students that want to share their journal entry will be allowed to briefly share their story with the class. But I want others that may want to keep their story private to have the the option to only share it with me. Some decisions are really hard and we just don't really want everyone to know what's going on in our lives or what we ended up doing at the end. And then to close the lesson, I just want to reiterate how important it is for my students to understand that decision making is always going to be a big part of their lives and that they are always going to be influenced by a large number of different factors. I want to remind them that some decisions will require weighing the pros and cons and making careful choices, and that it is okay to ask for help if faced with a difficult choice. I want to remind them that not everyone thinks the same way we do, especially when it comes to personal beliefs, and that sometimes we might not always agree with the decision that someone has made, but we still need to be sure that we're being supportive of them and their personal choices. And then I want them to quickly review the Decision Rocket handout that they will be able to keep at their desk and review when faced with decisions that require thought in the future. And the Rocket handout is something for them to use when they are making decisions that will kind of require them to think about the big picture, think about their beliefs. It mentions different strategies for meditating, going to a quiet, calm place, even praying, and asking an adult, and different strategies that they can use when they have to make a decision that's really going to be a huge impact on their lives. So the total time that I have allocated for this lesson is approximately 1 hour and 5 minutes. And I chose the instructional sequence to introduce decisions to the class and just to make them aware that they make decisions from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep each night. It's just amazing to see how many decisions that we make in the morning before we even get to work or school. And that just helps them see how many decisions that they make on a daily basis. Next, I want to be able to model decision making, have my students work together to identify factors that do influence our decision making processes, and then give them time to discuss these factors as a class. And then finally, I want them to apply the process to their everyday lives by recalling a time when they have had to make a big decision in their own lives. My student instructional materials will be paper, pen, or pencil, and a journal, and teacher instructional materials are going to be a small ball for our activity and then a decision rocket handout to help them with different strategies they can use for big decisions in their lives. I chose the handout to just give them a reminder of the steps to take when making a tough decision, the pen, pencil, and paper and journal to have them brainstorm as a group, make a list, and then write more about decision making to help them apply the skill to their everyday lives. I need the ball for our activity just to give each student a visual reminder to listen to who is in possession of the ball and who has the floor. The writing materials support the learning objective by giving the students further opportunities to think about and take part in the decision-making process. And I will evaluate their learning through the responses given during the activity, through their lists created during small groups, responses shared during our class discussion, and then just by reading their journal entries. And I think I will also be able to continually evaluate their learning throughout the school year as I watch them make decisions in the classroom. I chose this approach for evaluation because I don't feel as if I can test their decision-making skills through a pencil and paper test. Like I mentioned before, we all think differently, we have different backgrounds, morals, beliefs, and we're all going to make decisions differently. What I think might be a bad decision for someone might actually be the best option that they have in their lives. So while I can create a multiple choice test with what would you do types of questions, I don't know that their answers that they choose on the test are going to necessarily be what they will do in their real life decision making process. Obviously, they're going to want to get a good grade and impress the teacher, so they're going to choose what they think I want them to do when given a set of 4 options to choose from. So I think that watching them make decisions and talk about decisions when they think we're just visiting as a class is the best way for me to see their real life decision making skills in the future.